How often do you give and receive feedback at your workplace? Twice a year? Once every quarter? Well, that might not be enough. Multiple studies have shown that around 65% of employees want to get feedback more often from their managers, at least once a month in fact. Regular feedback motivates employees to take more initiative in addressing potential shortcomings. In fact, the lack of feedback tends to make 98% of employees disengaged from their work. And we're not just talking about praise. 92% of respondents agreed that performance improves when they receive negative feedback, also known as constructive criticism. In today's video, we'll explore exactly how you can give feedback that actually improves your team's motivation and performance. But before we dive into the topic, hit the subscribe button and notification bell under this video so you won't miss out on our future videos on call center optimization. Let's get started. It's a basic human need to feel seen and appreciated, especially at work. But feedback sessions can be uncomfortable, especially when the employee in question has performed poorly. If you're avoiding a tough conversation because you want to spare their feelings, you're actually doing more harm than good. As a matter of fact, studies show that companies that invest in regular employee feedback have 14.9% lower turnover rates. So how do you make a negative feedback session less awkward? We suggest that you stop thinking in terms such as positive or negative. Instead, you should focus on framing all feedback as constructive. So what makes feedback effective? There are a few things to keep in mind when preparing for a feedback session. First, make sure your feedback is clear and specific. Avoid empty words. For example, don't tell your employee that they've been doing a good job. Refer back to a few examples when you felt like they were doing particularly well. For example, you handled your last client training beautifully. You were professional, gave clear explanations, and were patient with all of the questions Ms. Taylor had. And the same goes for bad performance. Instead of saying things like "you're rude to customers," give specific examples. For example, yesterday on the call with Mrs. Jones, you used words that can make people feel rushed and unheard. Second, explain the impact of actions. The brain is always looking for reasons, and the more your employee is aware of the consequences of their actions, the easier it is to understand why some behaviors are regarded as positive or negative in a certain context. For example, for the positive feedback, you could say, "We received good feedback from the client after the training session, and she decided to upgrade her package today." And for negative feedback, you could say, "Mrs. Jones sent us a complaint about the conversation she had with you, claiming it was unprofessional. She's currently considering cancelling her plan." Why is this important? When we know the consequences of our actions, it's easier to understand why we should either avoid or repeat certain behaviours in the future. And whether an action is perceived as being positive or negative is often heavily context dependent. For example, some clients might prefer a short, direct conversation with customer support, while the same approach would leave a bad taste in other customers' mouths. Which takes us to our next point. Third, acknowledge your employee's perspective. Assume that your employee meant no harm and be open to their point of view. Even if they were in the wrong, giving them a non-judgmental safe space to express their thoughts builds trust. If you fail to do this, your employee might feel invalidated and will be less open to your suggestions in the future. In other words, they might be less motivated to do better next time if they feel they were punished unjustly and didn't have the opportunity to explain themselves. Number 4, avoid making it personal. Whether it's positive or negative, good feedback is never personal. This should go without saying, but avoid calling your employee names at all costs, no matter how mad you're currently feeling. Not only is it highly unprofessional, but labeling someone's personality instead of their actions puts them in boxes that are hard to escape. Even using seemingly mild words to describe a lazy or disorganized employee can be counterproductive. After all, what's the point of getting feedback if we can't change anyway? Number 5, encourage a growth mindset. To expand on the previous point, let's explore the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and how it can help you motivate your team with better feedback. Simply put, a fixed mindset means you believe that your personality and talents are predetermined and there's nothing you can do to change them. But with a growth mindset, you believe that your skills and traits can develop with practice. And yes, you can choose to develop a growth mindset, even if you're currently stuck with a fixed one. Remember what we said about labeling people? When you put people in categories such as lazy or not a fast learner, or even talented, you're implying that you don't expect these labels to change, or you take them for granted. For example, if instead of "you're lazy" you say, "I noticed you were late with your weekly goals consistently in the past week," you show an opportunity to end the behavior with a simple action. And what's wrong with "you're talented"? Imagine that one day your highly talented employee makes a few mistakes. If you tie talent to their identity, the mistake will make them feel like an imposter. And as a result, they might start avoiding challenging tasks just to keep confirming their identity of being naturally talented. But if you praise them for always focusing on learning new skills and aiming to do better every time, they will actively seek out challenging situations, even if that means making mistakes sometimes. Carol Dweck, the author of the amazing book Mindset, calls this the power of not yet. Mistakes don't mean that you're a failure, they just mean that you're not there yet. Number 6, be open to receiving feedback too. A feedback session should never be a one-way street. The best way to improve as a manager is to receive feedback from your team. Now, your employees might find this intimidating. After all, you are their boss and ultimately get to decide whether or not they keep their jobs. When you ask for constructive feedback from your employees, it's crucial to make them feel safe and guarantee that they won't get in trouble for being honest. The best strategy is to let employees know about this in advance, so they don't feel put on the spot and can prepare with some valuable insights. For example, you can ask your employees to think about these 4 questions before the feedback session. Firstly, what have I been doing well? Second, what do I need to improve on? Third, what have you been doing well? And fourth, what could you improve on? Let them know that you also prepare your answers to these 4 questions and they can decide which one of you should start with the answers and in which order. Number 7, make sure employees know the next steps. There's not much value in giving feedback if your employees don't know how to take meaningful action based on what you've discussed. Be sure to have some specific suggestions to help your team members grow. For example, your training session was great. To further improve your presentation skills, your next step to focus on could be deepening your technical knowledge about our products. Or, to understand what communication style the majority of our customers appreciate, I highly recommend listening to recordings of the phone calls that received a 5-star client rating. This way, your employee won't just get empty praise or a long scolding session, but will have the necessary tools to do better next time. Number 8, don't wait too long. As a rule of thumb, new employees should have a feedback session with you at least once a month, and everyone else at least once every quarter. Keep in mind that it's better to have a 10-minute session every month than a 1-hour-long call twice a year. Consider ad hoc feedback too. Whenever you feel like your employee needs intervention, coaching, or appreciation, jump on a quick call or send them a nicely worded Slack message on the same day. Keep these 8 points in mind and you're guaranteed to improve the quality of your feedback and the motivation levels among your employees. And if you want to get a measurable and specific idea of how your team is doing on the phone with customers and/or prospects, check out CloudTalk, our cloud-based telephony solution, which includes features such as call monitoring, agent reporting, call statistics, real-time data, call recording, and much, much more. Just click on the link in the pinned comment below to start a free all-access trial with complimentary calling credit, and no credit card is required to sign up. We hope you found this video valuable. And as always, thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.